Hi, I'm Pantazi. Going to answer a question by one of our subscribers here, Angelo Rossini. Now, this question has come up a number of times. I've answered it a number of times on YouTube here, but let me answer it again. Question was, or the main gist of the question is, what's different between the way I do Kyusho and the way that all the other organizations do Kyusho? Biggest one is that we don't use pressure points. Pressure points, as I've found, is a false model, and I was into the pressure points for a long period of time. I did them before I was even into the martial aspects of Kyusho, but I found that it's not the real working mechanism. Working with doctors, working with scientists of many different levels and disciplines, in conjunction with the martial aspects, I've come to understand fully that it is not a pressure point model, and that's the biggest difference. Now, we've got better effects. Our people are more skilled, all right, I believe, and I remember I was in those organizations, so I understand what they do, who they are, how they do it, and there are some talented people, don't get me wrong. There's some good people out there in the pressure point world, but they really can't explain what they're doing in reality. You can come up with this pressure point paradigm and then explain everything by that, but it's just it's hokey, all right? First of all, they're not real structures, so if they're not real structures, the whole idea of that being real Kyusho is kind of fictitious. Let me explain a little further, which I've mentioned in other videos too, but this will consolidate it a little bit. Pressure points work on the fascial system, which is the connective system of the muscles, around the muscles and between the muscles. And yes, it has a certain electricity of its own, but that is so weak compared to the nerve impulses, okay? The nerves are the main conduits of electrical energy. When you start getting out to the finer nerves and then finally into the fine mesh of fascia, then the neurological message is cut down substantially. Even though that's a bigger amount of tissue, it doesn't, there's the amount of electrical information transferring from your brain and central nervous system into your limbs and your motor structures and your organs. It's vastly smaller. It's insignificant, so to say. So what we do is we investigate the real structures. Okay, what nerve are you hitting here? How best can you attack it? What tools do you need? How does that correlate with the old ways and what the old masters said in their notes for targeting? Because they never used pressure points either. The tools, they use the 6G hands. It's prominent in their martial arts, the way they used to practice them. The more modern sportized versions back in the early 1900s, when they got together and decided to take karate, which was the China hand, 6G hands of Shaolin, Chinese hand, and turn it into karate, which is empty hand. Okay, they took away the real meaning and the real intent. So okay, that's there's two sections there. The pressure points, number one, are a fictitious model, and we don't practice that. We work on nerves. We work on the muscle spindle cells, the Golgi tendon organs, which they do a little bit. They know that the Golgi tendon exists, and they do it in the elbow. They haven't really gotten the significance of what it does, like how it affects the somatic, not the somatic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. Whereas what they're doing is just applying something, and they don't really understand it. So if they don't understand that at that deeper level as to what it's really affecting in the human body, how can they advance it? How can they, well, they can duplicate it easy enough, but how do they investigate it to go further into the body to see how it could ramify in other parts of the body or on the person's physiological state? They really can't, and that's how we get into it. We get into the real anatomy, okay, the physiology of the human body and the functionality. And we try to link it all together with the martial arts moves. Now, I taught karate for a long period of time. I got high levels and ranks before I stopped going through the belted system and just playing around with whatever group I wanted to play around with, and investigating all the karates, because I don't believe in differences. I always look for similarities, because that teaches you 100 times more than looking for a difference. If you find a difference and then you're sort of locked into that little difference cage, okay, and you think, okay, I study Shorin-ryu, so this is the way Shorin-ryu does it compared to, say, Goju or Weichi or whatever style it is, and then you say, okay, I do it, and that's my thing. So you sort of lock yourself in rather than saying, okay, what are all the similarities? So now if you're looking for similarities, you have to go out into the other arts and investigate it. So they do that to a certain point. They have people from all different styles, but here's the biggie. They don't have a curriculum, okay? We have a curriculum. In fact, that's why I got kicked out of Dillman's organization, is because I had a curriculum, and I was trying to tell him, because, you know, I got a degree in education, I was trying to give him this curriculum so he could advance his students, because you know everybody learns better in small, incremental, logically stepped progressions, and instead of just rambling around. And because they ramble, they don't have a focus, they don't have a building platform. And a couple people will argue in DKI that they do have a curriculum, but when I was there, I never saw one. Okay, yeah, okay, you have to learn this kata, this kata, this kata. They never ask you to show them the kata. They never ask you to test on that. You were tested on physical skill in the beginning. Then it got very political. And so that's why I kept pushing the curriculum to get people into a much better structure for everybody. And that's why the way our group does it, we build. Now, our curriculum is wide open. It doesn't matter whether you study grappling or Tai Chi or a hard karate style, Taekwondo, or even nothing at all. It's a stepped logical position that moves from first revivals, because revivals with reverse engineering teaches you everything, okay? And some people just go through the techniques and get the revival method, they pass their test, and they think, okay, I got it. Okay, no, it's everything, okay? Because once you start dissecting what you're really doing in one of those revivals, but more importantly, why it revives the guy, and what does it revive? It's not just waking the guy up from a neurological shock, like say the guy got knocked out and you wake him up. Well, you can wake him up with a slap across the face. That's not what our revivals do. Our revivals rebalance the person so they don't have the headaches that come with it. If they're not properly revived, yep, they'll get the headaches. And some people will sit on the sideline, and I just go over and I just tell them, you know, you weren't revived properly. You have to balance the neurological shock in the body, because the neurological shock comes on in a split second. It dissipates in a lot longer time frame. So if you don't address it, you're going to start to throw the whole body and the whole equilibrium of the body out of sync. So you have to really know what these revivals do. And I've had students of my own invent their own lung revival, for instance, and what they're doing is going to be more injurious to the person than reviving the guy. Now, yes, the person will, say on the intermediate lung, we're in a flight path, the intermediate lung revival. Now that's tried and true, tested on our somatic shutdowns of the diaphragm to our autonomic shutdowns of the diaphragm, or deeper structures to cause the cessation of breath. So if you're doing this thing that's not the correct revival, you have the chance of hurting that person more, or getting a side effect or a long-lasting effect, or a sickening of the body or a weakening in the body. Or, you know, there's some people that complain, yeah, ever since I've been punched there, it hasn't gone away after even a year. I'm still really sensitive there. And that's because they weren't properly revived. And that's another big difference in what we do. And we cross-correlate everything we do with medical science and the sciences of, like, the brain study that we did and whatnot. So we're trying to cross-correlate, and that cross-correlation will open more doors so you can get deeper into your art and just know what the body's about even more. So if you've ever seen my talks with Dr. Jacob McClintock going into the Shetan, okay, nobody's talking about that. Those pressure point guys don't even know what a Shetan is for the most part. And if you ask them, they'll just say it's a time period during the day, because that's what's in the modern translation of the Bubishi. But it's way more than that. So anyway, those are two main differences, that and we have a moving curriculum that builds on a platform of a step logical progression. increased stress, durability, resilience. We incorporate iron shirt. We incorporate multiple person attacks. We correlate weapon attacks. When you look at the other guys doing their demonstrations and whatnot and their training, they just stand there and they strike. And most of their testing, by the way, is either verbal, written, or you do one knockout and you're done. And as a matter of fact, I just heard that 15 guys just got promoted to 10th Dan in that organization. One of the guys I know personally, it was because he was a student. He came to me and got, after a few years of training, I think it was 4 or 5 years, I forget the time frame, because he was a 6th Dan Taekwondo. And he came to me for training, and after about 4 years, I got him promoted to first Dan under George Dillman. He got a Shodan 2001. Well, he just went up for his 10th Dan, so that's another big difference. But I'm going to digress from there because I could go off on a real tangent, and I don't want to rake some people through the mud. What I do want to say is that we don't have rank levels. What we do have is skill levels, and you're limited to a certain amount of skill training until you get to the next level, and that's to assure that you got the other stuff down. Okay, it's not to hold you back or anything like that. We want you to succeed, but at the same time, we don't want you to be chop socky like our revivals. You need to really know this stuff because you're playing around with another person's life, and that's our concern. So we do it in stepped skill levels, and you are not given this next skill level until you are accomplished at the prior skill level. And they all, of course, build on each other, and our testing really monitors, okay, you passed this first level test, as example, the revivals, a year ago, and you're now going from maybe level 2 or 3, whatever your time frame is. And we start from the beginning, and we check the revivals again. Did you gain skill? Did you gain a better knowledge of that first level, the second level? Okay, so we're always constantly monitoring everybody's level, not saying, okay, this is what you have to do it, okay, good, here's your done. That's not the way we roll, okay? And so, yeah, again, a lot of differences. Now, I've rambled on a long time. I could go on forever about this, but I'm going to cut it short. It's the main difference is we study the reality of human anatomy and physiology and functionality. They're in a paradigm that is not the correct paradigm. It's a false paradigm of pressure points and acupressure or healing, an ancient healing method, but it's not an ancient hurting method, and you just can't flip-flop it and make it a hurting method either. So that's my opinion. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack from some of the DKI guys or people in DKI, but sorry guys, that's my read. I'm entitled to it, and I'll be honest with you, I know both sides. Okay, you haven't trained in our side. Okay, and even our spin-offs are better than the DKIs. Yeah, we have attrition. We have people leaving our organization to start their own organizations and whatnot, and all fine and well. And you watch what they're doing. If they were from us, you can still see them using our curriculum. If there were other spin-offs, like they just joined and then figured they'd go to another group, you can see that their skill level is just, it's not that great. All right, so again, I could go on. I'm very opinionated, as anybody would be, because, but I back this up with the experiences I've had throughout the years and knowing the both sides of the story. So I hope that answers your question. This question was from Angelo Rossini. All right, so that's your answer. A long diatribe here, but that's it. So you take care.